Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
We don't have a province-wide outbreak. We've had a single importation.
One case of measles has been found in BC as infections rise across the world. Doctors in the province ask you to make sure you're vaccinated. Also,
we want to see people travel with others, especially in any kind of avalanche terrain.
as BC mountains get a huge dump of snow, safety experts warn you to be careful after a deadly avalanche and numerous calls for help.
When an irresistible thought.
And remembering Canada's First Lady of Jazz.
I still believe in chasing dreams and placing bets.
The long life of trailblazer Elanor Collins.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. BC has added a single case of measles to a growing list of cases across the country. Infections of that highly contagious disease are rising in some parts of the world. Chad Posset explains how much risk people here are facing.
BC's case came from a traveler to the province. They were unvaccinated and discovered to have measles when they sought medical attention in the Vancouver area. BC health officials are being cautious.
I think the likelihood of acquiring measles in British Columbia at this point is very, very low. So we don't have a province-wide outbreak. We've had a single importation. Fortunately, it was imported into probably the part of our province with the highest vaccination rates.
The case is tied to the city of Richmond. Vancouver Coastal Health is warning over two possible exposure points. First at the Vancouver Airport Hotel on Westminster Highway, and then at the ICBC location on Number 3 Road. People who are at these locations from February 24th to March 2nd should watch for fever, cough, runny nose, red eyes, and an eventual rash.
I'm concerned about every case of measles. You'll recall in 2019, there were 29 cases of measles in British Columbia, and we took very strong action to address that at that time, including actions that led to the immunization of 38,000 school-age children.
Officials in BC are using the case to reiterate the importance of being and getting vaccinated against measles, especially as families plan vacations and travel for the March school break.
We should not have diseases that should be eliminated in British Columbia, like measles, flaring up like we've seen in other parts of the world. And also to everybody who's trafficking and misinformation about vaccines, they make us safer.
But how do you know for sure if you've been vaccinated?
Yes, I've been vaccinated for measles.
For measles?
Yeah.
And how do you know?
You know, Mom has the sheet to show.
I guess I am.
You guess you are? How would you find out for sure? Do you know?
It's been a long time, but I'm pretty sure I am.
Yeah.
My mom has told me already about it.
All my children are vaccinated. I know exactly where their vaccination booklets are. But I think people in their late 50s, it's true, it might not be so obvious to know how to check.
If your mom says, you know what, you had all your vaccines as a kid, I know you did, we don't consider that to be the best source of information if it's undocumented. But if you know that for sure you weren't in a vaccine refusing household, then chances are you were vaccinated.
Still, if you are unsure over vaccination or have only received one dose, BC officials are encouraging you to get the jab. That's unless you were born prior to 1970. In that case, you're most likely already immune. Chad Posset, CBC News, Victoria.
A heads up for transit users now. Millennium Line service between Renfrew Station and VCC Clark has been halted due to a police incident near Commercial Broadway Station. A bus bridge has now been set up to run between those affected stations. We'll bring you any updates later in the newscast. BC's longtime Environment Minister is not seeking re-election this fall.
I think I have one more career in me, and I'd rather start it at 75 than 79. And also, there's just a lot of really good people in my caucus who I know are eager and have all the skills and enthusiasm to do the kind of work that I and others have been fortunate to do in cabinet.
George Heyman is a three-term member of the legislature who introduced the NDP's Clean BC Climate and Economic Plan. He says serving the people of his Vancouver Fairview riding since 2013 has been a great honor. Heyman is now endorsing former Vancouver City Councillor Andrea Reimer for the NDP nomination in the riding, which will become Vancouver Little Mountain. Current City Councillor Christine Boyle is also running for that nomination. The province says it will build 10 new Foundry Centres across the province. The centres will provide young people with access to services like primary care, counselling, and addiction supports. They'll be in Burnaby, Chilliwack, Nanaimo, Port Alberni, Quesnel, Souk West Shore, South Surrey, Vancouver, Vanderhoof, and the West Kootenays.
Never has there been a time when it's been more important for the province to work with our health system, with community partners, with across the entire community space to ensure that youth have access to the mental health and addictions care.
Whiteside says she plans for the Surrey Foundry Centre to be open by the end of this year. Local emergency shelters have been feeling the squeeze after refugee claims nearly doubled last year. Richmond City Councillor Carol Day says around 32.5% of beds at Richmond House Emergency Shelter in Ironwood are filled up by asylum seekers. Speaking with Early Edition host Stephen Quinn, Day wants Ottawa to help with overcrowding.
Preferably, they build the modular housing or something like it, or potentially rent houses or use hotels. Alternatively, pay us. I mean, we've been housing them for a long time, and it costs a lot of money, and it takes spots away from other people that really do need the homeless shelter. So, either pay up or get busy and build your own.
What happens in between? I mean, if the federal government isn't paying up and there's no place for these people to go, then what?
Well, then the waiting lists get longer and longer, and that's come April 15th, our emergency shelter that's open in a swimming pool changing room will be closed down because it's going to be going back to being a swimming pool again at South Arm Community Center. So we're going to see tents popping up all over the place.
Day has been working on this issue with the Salvation Army, the Homeless Outreach Task Force, and local MLAs and MPs. She's going to bring forward the motion at tonight's Richmond Council meeting. Canadians who have struggled with a slow iPhone 6 or 7 could be in line for a cash payout from Apple. This comes after a BC judge approved a settlement from the tech giant over a phone throttling lawsuit. Anise Dari explains how much claimants can get.
This is the iPhone 6.
Poor performance in older iPhones, a regular complaint at this used smartphone shop.
Customers were starting to call in to talk about their phone slowing down and ask what could be done about it. And the short answer is there wasn't a lot that we could do to help them out there.
It wasn't an imaginary problem. A class action lawsuit claimed as batteries got older, Apple deliberately released software that slowed down some phones without telling users. Now, years later, Apple is paying out more than $14 million in a legal settlement just approved by a BC judge.
I think they should pay because I remember what happened to the phones, and it was bad.
Obviously, they're being held accountable. You can't just do that. I mean, if the phone's good, the phone's good.
$14 million sounds like a drop in the bucket for a company worth $2.7 trillion. But eligible Canadians will be able to get up to $150 if they had an iPhone 6 or 7. Experts point out companies don't always explain software updates.
And when they don't really kind of advertise in advance that these might be some of the side effects that happen to address battery issues or security flaws or something, that's usually when there's people say, hang on, what's going on here?
Apple recently settled a similar lawsuit in the US, but they aren't admitting any wrongdoing in either case.
That's very normal. I've settled literally hundreds of class actions, and I've never had anyone admit they did anything wrong.
As for more recent iPhone users, Apple introduced a feature years ago that tells you whether they've slowed down a phone because of an old battery. Anise Hidari, CBC News, Calgary.
The dire warnings came true this weekend. A deadly avalanche killed one person in Revelstoke on Sunday. And while there is plenty of fresh powder to get skiers and snowboarders excited, Avalanche Canada says the conditions remain dangerously unpredictable. Zara Premji has more on the warnings and risks if you head out.
Be very, very cautious if you choose to head into the backcountry.
A warning that's been repeated throughout the last week and continues.
It's very tempting to head out to those bigger lines when skies turn blue and there is so much fresh snow, especially because it's been such a strange season. But like I said, it's a waiting game. We can't really outsmart this problem.
Following the death of one person in Revelstoke and 9 others needing rescues in the southwestern part of the province on Sunday, avalanche forecasters have extended their warnings until at least Thursday as hazardous conditions persist in the backcountry.
We want to see people travel with others, especially in any kind of avalanche terrain, and make sure they have really good communication and navigation equipment. If people are not able to get a message out on their location, it could be a really serious situation for them.
Barnett's team was called to one of the 9 rescues needed Sunday, and his team is warning if the terrain is not safe and you're stuck in the backcountry, be prepared to spend the night.
We're extremely concerned because our fear is we may not be able to get to these people, and that may be by choice. We're not going to send our members into steep avalanche terrain when the conditions are as high as they were last night.
But if you were looking to take to the hills safely, there were way more options today, with local ski hills offering a lot more runs and packed with lots of families taking the day off to soak up the sun-covered ski runs.
Oh, so slow to start. So slow. Like we should have been up here in January at least.
Great to get out here. I mean, pretty far and few between with climate change and everything else. So, yeah, we're just appreciating the day.
Yeah, super excited.
But if the skiers are tempted by the fresh powder off the beaten path, a warning.
Stick to lower elevations, less technical terrain, less mountainous terrain. People can still go out safely and enjoy many of the areas.
And he reminds adventurers search and rescue is available and free of charge if you need help. So call. Zara Premji, CBC News, West Vancouver.
Parts of Vancouver Island, meanwhile, woke up to a winter wonderland after 15 centimeters of snow fell overnight in some areas. As Claire Palmer shows us, skiers and outdoor enthusiasts had a much better day than those who had to be on the roads.
Vancouver Island Violet has been providing predictions since 2022, and so far, she is 2 for 2.
Vancouver Island Marmot Van Isle Violet's predictions for 6 more weeks of winter seem to be coming true, as snow fell across the island over the weekend. The Nanaimo area saw upwards of 5 centimeters of accumulation Sunday night.
It's been off and on. We've had a little snow lately, but not enough to scare us.
When we moved here, we thought we were getting away from the snow when we moved from the interior, and here it is, beginning of March, and we got snow again. So
I've been here, living here for 35 years, and you can be down to your shirt sleeves in March, or you can be building a snowman. So you get a little bit of everything in March.
Main Roads, which maintains highways in the region, says that roads look good this morning. However, with temperatures expected to dip again, operations manager Stefan Yancey advises caution.
And yeah, it was a bit of a challenging storm as we saw the really wet snow come down and then the temperatures drop overnight, which is great conditions for black ice to form. So,
a number of bus routes in the Campbell River region were canceled on Sunday due to snow, as well as Canada Post service. Bowen Island lost power, but amid the inconvenience, a welcome break for skiers, as Mount Washington saw 11 centimeters fall in 48 hours. Comox Valley Search and Rescue says anywhere between 50 to 100 centimeters fell in the alpine backcountry over the past few days. But they say the recent snowfall has increased avalanche risk.
I think the big piece right now is just everybody kind of waking back up again to all the things they need to remember when they're going back out in the backcountry. Good habits. That's what's the best safety measure that you can have.
And it's back to basics on the road as well.
I would definitely recommend people keep in touch and go through Drive BC to check the latest driving conditions. And, if it's going to be icy, if you can not travel or readjust your schedule, it would be recommended for sure.
And a reminder, snow tires are still required on many major BC highways until April 30th. Claire Palmer, CBC News, Nanaimo.
Here's the expert. Darius Madavi joins us with a first look at the weather. Yes, last night got that snow falling across parts of Metro Vancouver and beyond.
Yes.
That was interesting.
Yes. One of these systems that's a little bit difficult to forecast. So it's called a convective snow squall. It's when all the conditions are just right for one of these pretty quick and heavy snowstorms to pop up in parts of Vancouver. We saw similar conditions across parts of the island, bringing a decent dump of snow, as much as 15 centimeters to parts of the island and Metro Vancouver, particularly in places like up by SFU and in Coquitlam, and then even a decent dump in places like Surrey at lower elevation. So a pretty good amount of snow coming, a bit of a surprise this time around. But if we zoom out to the rest of the southern parts of BC, you can see plenty of precipitation across parts of the province in the last 48 hours. Looking ahead over the next couple days, calming down a little bit, but we did get good news for snowpack. We got as much as a meter, and in some places as much as 2 meters on those local mountains in places like Whistler and on the mountains on the island. So pretty good news for the snowpack. If you look here, for the first time in months, we're back above the record low levels that we've been at, but still in the bottom 10%, probably the second lowest the snowpack has been in the last 35 to 40 years, so not great still, but improvement is improvement. If we take a look at the avalanche risk, though, still moderate to high across the province, so we're keeping an eye out for that as well, because as we've heard, it's quite dangerous conditions given that unstable snow beneath that fresh layer that's fallen. But fortunately, not too much more in the way for Vancouver. Cold, but clearing up for a pretty sunny next couple days.
Okay, we'll check in later. Darius, thanks very much.
Thank you.
One of BC Ferry's major vessels, the Coastal Renaissance, is back on the water after being docked for repairs since the summer. The original repairs were expected to be complete in just a few days, but after a safety inspection, technicians found more issues. The vessel is now back making regular trips between Swartz Bay and Tsawwassen. Its first sailing was this morning at 7 a.m. Canada has lost its First Lady of Jazz. Elanor Collins died on Sunday in Surrey at the age of 104. She's being remembered for her illustrious career and social legacy. Yvette Brand looks back at Elanor Collins' remarkable life.
When an irresistible force such as you meets and holds immovable objects like me, you can bet.
Elanor Collins has been dubbed Canada's First Lady of Jazz.
Something's gotta give, something's gotta give, something's gotta give.
Number one, because she was the first in some of those situations. The first woman, first black woman to have their own television show.
Welcome to the show, Bert.
Well, thank you, Elanor. She hosted Elanor, a CBC show in the 50s.
Something cool.
And was billed with jazz greats of her time, from Oscar Peterson to Dizzy Gillespie. Still, most people don't know her whole name, much less her first.
When I heard them, I thought, this is Canada's Ella. This is Canada's Billy, you know, thinking of all those jazz legends that go by their first names.
At 16, she was singing at supper hour shows in Edmonton.
She had courage. She was a first on many levels. She was a pioneer. And she exhibited grace, class, and dignity at all times.
In the 1930s, she moved to Burnaby, BC, at a time when black people faced overt racism. When neighbors protested her presence, she volunteered to teach their children music.
That showed the kind of person she was and how she confronted it, and she won them over.
No complaints and no regrets.
No complaints and no regrets. I still believe in chasing dreams and placing bets. But I have learned that all you give is all you get, so give it all you got.
Still strong to the last note. Yvette Brand, CBC News, Vancouver.
We have an update on the transit interruption from earlier in the newscast. Millennium Line service has now been restored after a police incident near Commercial Broadway Station. With that one case of measles reported in BC, health officials are reminding parents and guardians to vaccinate their children. After the break, we hear from a doctor on why protection is so important. Stick around. Thanks for joining our commercial-free live stream tonight. Friends, family, and members of the community gathered in Nanaimo over the weekend to honor a woman missing for half a year. Sherry Corrigal was last seen in September, prompting RCMP to once again appeal for any clues in her case. Claire Palmer spoke with loved ones who believe she is alive and are pleading for any information to help find her.
Sherry Corrigal has been missing for nearly 6 months. Friends and family came together today, pleading for her to return home.
We love you. We miss you. We just want to know that you're okay. We just want you to come home.
You know, I wait for the call. I'm her next of kin on her records, so You know, I believe that she's still with us. I still believe that she is with us.
It's believed that Corrigal was last seen in Nanaimo on September 11th at Franklin and Selby, where she was dropped off by a friend. Nanaimo RCMP say they're extremely concerned about her whereabouts. Her foster family says she was known to stay with different friends and family, so she wasn't reported missing until November, despite having been missing for 2 months.
I know she wouldn't not message me back. And just because of the lifestyle, I was worried that, nobody would care that she was missing. But there's a lot of people who really care about her.
While she lived a transient life, Eastbrook says it's not like her to not be in contact. Friends describe Corrigal as caring and an outgoing person.
It's nice. It's nice to see that people care about Sherry, and she does have a lot of friends, and that says something for the kind of person that she is. So.
Agnew says that she was a motivated girl with a lot to look forward to.
She had many different things she wanted to do. Just never reached it yet. And I mean, there's still lots of time if we find her. She's got a lifetime to reach that goal, right?
Agnew says that baseless rumors about what happened to Corrigal aren't helpful and asks for anyone with first-hand information to speak with police. Claire Palmer, CBC News, Nanaimo.
Back to our top story now. One case of measles has been reported in BC. As the number of infections rises in some parts of the world, it's the first recorded case in this province since 2019. Dr. Iris Gorfinkel is a family physician and clinical researcher in Toronto. She joins us now. Dr. Gorfinkel, thanks for being here. First of all, what measles symptoms should people be watching out for right now?
It starts out looking just like a cold. In fact, the best doctor cannot tell the difference between a cold, flu, COVID. It looks just like that. Runny nose, cough, sore throat, high fever. But then 2 days in, something special happens. Koplik spots. Now, those are spots that develop on the inside of the mouth, and they are unique to measles. So COVID doesn't cause it, the common cold doesn't cause it, and neither does influenza. They look like tiny grains of salt on a red base. Now, those are only going to be there for 2 days because as the rash goes from the mouth, it can spread to the face, to the neck, to the trunk of the body, and then out to involve the arms and legs and the palms and soles. But that rash on the mouth, that's the big clue. 7 out of 10 people experience it.
It sounds unpleasant, and we know that there is no cure for measles. We do have a vaccine. Are there any other treatments beyond that?
Yeah, it's kind of scary because 1 in 5 people who get measles wind up in the hospital. 1 in 20 kids can have pneumonia. So the clock starts ticking as soon as the symptoms start. 3 days into it, in fact, a person can still get vaccinated, and that will reduce the severity of the disease. If it's as late as 6 days, antibodies can be given to reduce the severity of the disease. But it's important to understand, These do not cure the disease. No. We don't have any antivirals or antibiotics that treat it. It's a viral infection. So unfortunately, what we're left with are things like Tylenol to treat symptoms.
Now, with spring break on the horizon, lots of people planning to travel. What are your concerns as we may expect an increase in travel and possible spread?
Yeah, I want you to just imagine those airports for a moment. Crowds of people standing shoulder to shoulder, breathing, blowing their nose on their Kleenexes, then touching railings. Because guess how measles is spread? It can stay 2 hours in the air. It can stay 2 hours on surfaces. And that's how people can get it, breathing it in, touching those surfaces. So that is very concerning. Travel is a reason to ensure that you're vaccinated.
Now, if people are unsure if they or perhaps their kids are vaccinated, what is the best thing for them to do? If they can find the list that perhaps their mom, and blessed my mother for having that list that said I was vaccinated, but what if you don't know?
If you don't know, it's always better just to get vaccinated. The vaccinated safety is very much there. The risks of not being vaccinated are very severe. As I say, 1 in 5 individuals who get measles will in fact be hospitalized. And it takes 95% of us to stop community spread. And as you may have heard, we've already had a case in Ontario of community spread. So it is pretty concerning. So if in doubt, get vaxxed.
All right. Dr. Iris Gorfinkel, family physician and clinical researcher in Toronto. We always appreciate your time and your expertise. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Ottawa is following in BC's footsteps by offering free contraceptives with a prescription. BC became the first province to do that nearly a year ago. Now, Ottawa is including free contraceptives in the National Pharmacare Plan. As Janella Hamilton reports, it's being applauded as a big step in improving equitable health care across the country.
Dr. Wendy Norman has worked with both the provincial and federal governments in creating policy change. She says the cost of contraception was widely considered the biggest barrier for British Columbians.
The most effective methods were competing with people trying to pay rent or to get food for the children that they already have at home. And they'd be left using less effective methods of contraception or no contraception as their only choice, and facing the risks for unintended pregnancy.
In the first 8 months of the program, 188,000 people were able to access free contraception, which is incredible. That's life-changing for a lot of people.
The newly announced federal pharmacare program is expected to mirror BC's current coverage. Under the provincial policy, almost all prescription contraceptives are free, including birth control pills, IUDs, implants, vaginal rings, contraceptive injections, and the morning after pill.
For the hormonal IUD, which is what I went with, they can go upwards to $500, $550. So it just made it a lot easier to make that choice without having to factor in how I was going to afford it, or how I was, choosing a more middle ground one that may not be what was best for my body.
She says the ability to choose alleviates stress and anxiety for women. If the federal pharmacare legislation passes, provinces will have to opt in.
We have a couple of provinces who are super eager, want to be on the front lines, want to do this right away.
It's a big win for gender equality and access to basic fundamental health care.
So these costs continue to go down as the program is rolled out.
Dr. Norman says providing prescribed contraception at no cost could ultimately translate to savings of $27 million each year.
The prevention of unplanned pregnancy is less expensive for a government than to manage the unplanned pregnancies. In our work in BC, we found that 40% of all pregnancies were not planned.
She says the move to expand the program countrywide is a monumental step towards equitable, universal health care. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
The death of a former Winnipeg Blue Bomber this week has brought attention again to stigma around colorectal cancer. The 33-year-old's death came as a surprise to many people. But as Saurabh Sandhu explains, experts say early detection can save lives.
Just 4 years ago, Craig Rowe was living the dream, raising the Grey Cup after winning the CFL's top prize. But on Wednesday, fans were shocked. when his wife announced the defenseman's death on social media, opening up about the struggle Rowe went through after his cancer diagnosis 18 months ago. Hearing of Rowe's death brought another former BC Lions player back to some unpleasant times. Star kicker Louis Passaglia was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer in 2013.
I was shocked at the age of the young man.
Now cancer-free, Passaglia works to raise awareness of colorectal cancer, advocating for early diagnosis and treatment.
My community involvement here in Vancouver and BC, that maybe I could put the word out there that, hey, I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people, both men and women, that are diagnosed with colon cancer.
This March for Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month, there's a push for people to get screened. According to the Canadian Cancer Society, in 2023, more than 24,000 Canadians were expected to be diagnosed with colorectal cancer.
I was feeling the best I'd felt in years, but I was ignoring serious symptoms.
Michael Butterfield is another colorectal cancer survivor who was first diagnosed in 2019. But he says telling his family and friends was not easy.
Anything that has a rectum in it is really embarrassing. So I just told people I had stomach cancer. It took me probably about a year to refer to it as colorectal cancer.
Butterfield says he was diagnosed at first stage, which greatly increased his chances of survival.
It's 95% preventable. If you have a colonoscopy on a regular basis and they find polyps, which are precancerous masses, they can remove them. And in most cases, that's the end of it.
Butterfield now works as an ambassador for Colorectal Cancer Canada.
Get checked out regardless of your age. And if you don't and you're over 50, find out what the symptoms are.
This is something that if you catch it early, it can be cured, so why not get checked?
In July, Colorectal Cancer Canada is hosting a string of events to educate the public and fundraise, including a series of walks and virtual events in 9 cities across the country. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
Big wins for Donald Trump today as he continues his pursuit of the Republican presidential candidacy. Why some states have had to reverse their ballot ban after the break.
Day 37 of the missions around every step across Canada. Beautiful day here in the southwest corner of Newfoundland. Getting really close to Port Au Basque.
Very much driven by a lot of grief I was feeling from the loss of both of my parents to cancer. Not only emotionally, but also physically, like just crazy hard to move forward.
Day 61 of the Cross Canada run today.
I had heard about Terry Fox's story in the past, just from videos online and things, and I was really moved by what I saw there, not just with what he did, but like the way he did it with such a great spirit and in such a great way. I was really, really moved by his story, and obviously his cause was cancer research.
It's John here on day 117, I think it is. Just made it to Ontario. Super stoked. This road, just been coming down this bike trail over here. So it's really, really cool to be in Ontario now.
And yeah, wildlife, the bear got into the stroller that I push all of my stuff inside it, nicknamed her Shania.
Heading out.
Very regular obstacles, challenges, difficulties. The weather, the wildlife. So I was in Calgary when we had the coldest temperatures in half a century.
G'day, John here. I'm the Kiwi fella currently running solo across the entire width of Canada.
I've had some of the most beautiful compliments and comments I've ever received in my life have come from people that I've met along the way on this journey, just how much this run has touched them. You know, people that have lost family to cancer as well.
G'day, John here. I'm the Kiwi fella running solo across the entire width of Canada.
I'm really proud of how much obviously the funds raised, and obviously having reached Victoria, actually reached the end, but I think the thing I'm most proud of is the beautiful effect it seems to have had on people that I've met along the way.
The state of Maine says Donald Trump can be on its U.S. presidential ballot in November. It has reversed its ban after a unanimous decision today by the U.S. Supreme Court. As Paul Hunter explains, the top court also blocked Colorado's attempt to disqualify Trump over the U.S. Capitol riot on January 6, 2021.
I want to start by thanking the Supreme Court.
For Donald Trump, it is being described as monumental, a clear and massive win. The U.S. Supreme Court ruling his name can be on the ballot for the presidential election this fall. The court's 9 justices unanimously reversing a decision by the top court in Colorado that had decided Trump was disqualified.
You cannot take somebody out of a race. The voters can take the person out of the race very quickly, but a court shouldn't be doing that, and the Supreme Court saw that very well.
The case stems from the rioting on Capitol Hill January 6, 2021. Those in the crowd egged on by Trump as they tried to prevent Joe Biden from gaining the presidency. The U.S. Constitution specifically prohibits any who've engaged in insurrection against the U.S. from holding office. But after arguments at the Supreme Court last month, the justices agreed no single state, and indeed other U.S. states have followed Colorado's lead, can be allowed to disqualify a federal candidate in that way, ruling only the U.S. Congress can do that. But even as efforts to keep Trump off this year's ballots failed, those who'd led the push to do so underlined.
What's important to note is that the Supreme Court's decision today did not exonerate him. They did not say that January 6th wasn't an insurrection, and they did not say that he didn't engage in insurrection. Instead, the court let him off on a technicality.
All of this one day ahead of so-called Super Tuesday, when millions of Americans will cast ballots toward nominating candidates for the White House. One day after his win at the Supreme Court, but while still battling multiple other criminal and civil cases against him, Donald Trump is expected to all but officially secure his nomination tomorrow. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
A senior member of the Israeli war cabinet is in Washington for a series of high-level meetings with American officials. Benny Gantz is a centrist political rival of the Israeli prime minister. And as Abi Kuavasan explains, some sources say the visit was organized without Benjamin Netanyahu's approval.
The visit comes after U.S. President Joe Biden made further critical comments of Netanyahu potentially losing global support with his far-right coalition government. On Sunday, Harris repeated U.S. calls for a pause in fighting and for more aid for Palestinians in Gaza.
Given the immense scale of suffering in Gaza, there must be an immediate ceasefire. For at least the next 6 weeks, which is what is currently on the table. This will get the hostages out and get a significant amount of aid in.
Aid agencies continue to call for an immediate ceasefire. The United Nations has previously said a quarter of the population of Gaza, about 560,000 people, is on the brink of famine. There are reports children are dying from dehydration and malnutrition. The U.S. carried out its first aid airdrop over the weekend, which critics say is limited in nature, ineffective, and dangerous. Before the war, 500 aid trucks entered Gaza daily. Last month, on average, only 98 trucks crossed into the enclave every day. Israel denies blocking aid, but Human Rights Watch has said Israel is violating orders from the International Court of Justice by doing just that. Over the weekend, critical negotiations in Cairo went ahead without Israel's delegation. That's because Netanyahu reportedly made 2 conditional demands which went unanswered by Hamas. One, clarity on the number of Palestinian detainees Hamas is seeking in any exchange. 2, a list outlining the surviving Israeli hostages. A Hamas official told the BBC a pause in fighting was needed to gather that information. Abi Kuavasan, CBC News, London.
Talks of a ceasefire in Gaza have so far been unproductive. And as Israel keeps up its unrelenting offensive in the territory, there's growing alarm over a lack of aid, the worsening humanitarian crisis, and the war's toll on some of the most vulnerable. Our Chris Brown has those details and a warning for you. Viewers may find some of the images in this story disturbing.
Much of Gaza is starving, but 10-year-old Yazan Al-Kafarna's case is especially awful. Born with cerebral palsy, his family couldn't access the specific food and medical care he needed to fight off his illnesses. There's nothing available for my son, his anguished father told a videographer working for CBC News when he met the family over the weekend. Before the war, we could get the food we needed. Now, all the food I used to get him isn't available. His hospital ward in Rafah is filled with other severely undernourished children. Dr. Bilal Al-Shafi says what they're enduring is affecting their brains and development and will haunt them for life if they survive. Israel says such desperate scenes are not its fault, that the problem lies in distributing food inside Gaza. But pre-war, 500 or more trucks a day entered the territory. Now it's just a fifth of that. Humanitarian groups make the damning allegation that starvation is part of a deliberate Israeli policy.
To us, this is definitely a matter of collective punishment of the people of Palestine for what has happened on October 7th. People are drinking toilet water, they're eating wild plants, they're using animal fodder to make bread.
Nations have begun using airdrops as an insufficient stopgap, as the United States, arguably Israel's staunchest ally, joins a chorus of international voices urging Israel to let more aid trucks in. At the Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza, there isn't enough food to feed even the tiniest patients. 15 children have died there in recent days, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. Doctors say mothers can't nurse their babies or give them any immunities because they themselves are too malnourished. On Monday morning came word that Yazan had died. Oxfam is predicting there will be mass deaths from starvation in Gaza very soon. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
6:41 now. There's a live look at Tahoe Pines ski slope in California, where much of the region has seen blizzards since Friday. More on how winter is treating folks south of the border and here after this.
Jennifer Sanderson says her dog Braden gives her independence. She has a visual impairment and needs him to go most places.
Braden's personality is very sweet. He's very cuddly, he's very affectionate, but he also loves to work. As soon as the harness comes out, he's gone.
PEI may soon recognize service dogs. A bill will be presented in the legislature this spring.
There's no clear way for a person who needs a service dog to identify that it is a valid service dog, and there's no way for an establishment to identify if it's a real service dog. So,
if new rules are approved, PEI would be one of 4 provinces to have certification. It gives people who need the animals more security.
It'll bring more accountability and more awareness to guide dogs and service dogs, plus more protection too. I'm hoping there'll be less of the people that pass off their animal as a guide dog or a service dog that doesn't have that training.
A school that breeds and trains service dogs says fakes are a big issue.
When there are fake animals out there and they gain access and those animals have not been trained and do not have the behavior that's expected and required, it can actually pose a safety risk, but it makes it difficult for people to know who's a legitimate team and who isn't.
This is what they're like.
Dogs can be trained to help people with a wide range of needs, from mobility issues to seizures, diabetes, autism, and more. Unfortunately, people and their dogs aren't always welcome.
And I have difficulty moving myself, bending, and using my joints properly. I've had some trouble in the past and not so long ago about accessibility with my dog. But if the law's a little more clear about what schools are recognized, what does it take to have a service dog guide, and we can have a better experience.
Alexander Matt is from Quebec and met Islander Kristen Cameron at dog school.
I was hit by a drunk driver while I was cycling. I was just a master's student, and me getting a dog probably gave me my life back. And this is my second dog, and there's been a lot of things going on lately that have been really challenging, and again, like, I get this dog with the biggest heart coming into my life, and it's what's sustaining me right now. I have a physical disability, and I have the right to have a service dog in public, and I just hope that that is the same, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road for me.
The Service Dog Act could include other animals, too. Details on training requirements, certificates, and licenses still need to be worked out. PEI is using Nova Scotia's legislation as a guide. It's expected to take about a year before any new rules would be in place. Laura Meter, CBC News, Charlottetown.
Natural disasters are happening more and more often. Critics warn that as new ones develop in parts of Canada, they will hit a country that is not as well prepared. The CBC's Marina von Stackelberg on the challenge of getting ahead of the crisis.
We actually have 3 locations.
Communities in the BC interior are preparing their emergency command centres. For a summer Ottawa warns could be worse than last year's record-breaking wildfire season. One of the tactics, controlled burns, a method that held off this fire near the town of Kimberley last year.
It is proof that the science around how to provide landscape management is there. Again, we just need to get the senior levels of government on board.
In Yellowknife, after a wildfire last summer led to a 3-week mandatory evacuation, the city is now paying to update its communication systems and hire more coordination staff.
The biggest thing that's missing is dollars to municipalities to actually be prepared. When it comes to our territorial funding, we receive no funding to be emergency prepared.
The provinces and territories have met with Canada's Emergency Preparedness Minister ahead of the upcoming season.
So I would say that this is a different strategy. It's about coordinating to be more responsive.
When pressed on what their new strategy was, Harjit Sajjan didn't specify. Instead, he pointed to the need for early wildfire detection and what individuals can do to protect their homes.
Was actually moving patio furniture out of the way, because most of the patio furniture, when it lights up, it burns longer and it burns brighter, and then the house has a potential to catch on fire.
This expert says she doesn't hear a clear plan.
We need to hit the ground running now, and not much was said on, okay, what is the implementation going to go forward over the next few weeks?
Ottawa has promised to speed up its financial support after disasters hit, but those changes won't happen for over a year.
If you're a homeowner, you can't be certain of how much money you're going to get, what it's going to pay for, or even how long it's going to take.
Back in Yellowknife, the city is still filling out paperwork to get money from Ottawa for last summer's forest fires, all while trying to prepare for another fast-approaching wildfire season. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
It is cleanup time in California after a weekend blizzard slammed the mountains of the Golden State. The region saw 3 straight days of snow, which closed roads and highways and left many people stranded. Some areas saw as much as 3 meters of snow, and strong wind led to drifts even higher in some places. Ski hills were also shut down because they simply had too much snow. In places, the snow higher than the ski lifts. And that snow is sticking around, expecting to impact that region over the next few days as well. Not as severe in BC, thankfully, Doris, but we did get a bit of a blast.
Yeah.
On some roads, good for the hills, though.
Ski hills closed because the snow was higher than the lifts. Sounds crazy to me. Yeah. Very glad to hear that wasn't the case here, as somebody who got to go skiing over the weekend.
Nice.
Very fortunate that that was not the case here. Yes, very good news for me and everybody who wanted to go out and do some winter sports over the last few days, but less good news on the roads, especially with that surprise snowstorm that came. But still some snow sticking around on some of the mountains, and at some of those peaks you can see still a little bit of a stormy weather, dropping even more snow there, although continuing to calm down over the next couple days. So pretty calm, but that's just here in Vancouver. Still some more weather warnings in other parts of the province. Up in the inland sections of the north coast, Arctic outflow flow warning because those really cold wind chill values and some very strong winds. Also snowfall warnings for some parts of the southeast and winter storm warnings as well. We're talking 10 to 25 centimeters of snow from earlier today until potentially either tonight for the snowfall warnings, tomorrow for those winter storm warnings. So still a little bit of activity, but generally calming down across the province. You can see that little bit of snow continuing in the southeast. By tomorrow, we've pretty much cleared up across the province with the exception of a little bit of snow just crossing the BC-Alberta border. So a small chance of some snow in Golden tomorrow, but not looking like too much. And then as we continue to roll this forward, a day of calm for the most part until Wednesday when we see that snow start to move in, the next system roll in to the northwest. And then as that continues to move in, we'll see it spread to more of the province, including parts of the island by Thursday, and then potentially making its way down here to Vancouver, either late Thursday or early Friday, but that could change very easily because we're quite a few days out. But looking quite a few days out means that we've got a bit of calm before that, so that's kind of nice. Although, with the calm comes the cold because we have this ridge of Arctic air coming down, mostly affecting the north, but also dropping our temperatures down here in Vancouver. So expect lows going down to -4, -5 tonight in Vancouver, and our highs the next few days quite chilly as well, as much as 10, 15 degrees below normal. So be prepared for that over the next few days before starting to come up Thursday and Friday into the weekend. But again, that's when that rain comes. So not really escaping either. It's Vancouver in March. You either get the sun and you get the cold, or you get the rain and the warm. As you can see here, pretty calm across the province tomorrow. And as we zoom in, nothing but some pretty calm conditions. As we look at the conditions across the province, lots of sun, just that little chance of snow in Golden. And beyond that, if we zoom in here in Vancouver, pretty much just everything that we've talked about. A little bit of sun over the next few days, despite those really cold lows. And then some warmer and showerier conditions as we get into the weekend.
Okay, Darius, thanks very much.
Thank you.
As we told you earlier, the First Lady of Canadian Jazz died yesterday at the age of 104. Elanor Collins made her debut on TV in 1954 right here on CBC. It was the first Canadian TV show with a mixed race cast, and the first live music TV show broadcast from Vancouver. Collins would go on to become the first woman in Canada to headline her own TV show. Here's a brief look back at her life and the legacy she leaves behind.
Seems like happiness.
My life is made of music. I'd rather sing something than say no thank you.
I'd rather be lonely than happy with somebody else.
When she opened her mouth to sing, I thought, this is Canada's Ella. This is Canada's Billy.
Time for hugging and kissing, but night.
She came to Vancouver in the 1930s, and she started a singing career here. Started singing on the radio, on CBC radio, and then in the 1950s, she was given her own national television show. She was the first female entertainer in Canada to have a national television show. She was the first black entertainer in Canada to have a national television show with the Elanor Show.
Good evening. This is Elanor again. I hope you've had a pleasant weekend, and I'm glad you got home early.
When you hear her sing, you're hearing that sincerity of emotion, that remarkable ability she has to communicate emotion through those notes. It's remarkable to have had all of those things combined into one voice. I really do think of her as one of the great jazz vocalists of all time.
I still believe in chasing dreams and placing bets, but I have learned that all you give is all you get, so give it all you got.
Is just a thing called joy. He got a smile.
A beloved winter carnival has been reborn in Revelstoke, just in time for the town's 125th anniversary. We're going to take you there right after this.
Hi, I'm Laura. Welcome to St. Louis, and come on in, I'm gonna show you my space. I live in St. Louis, and I've been here for 4 years. It's a small town near Rimouski in Quebec. I think the vibe I want to have in my house is the bohemian vibe, the boho decor with a lot of rattan furniture and of course plants to accessorize my decor in my home. So there's my entryway, so I have a little bit of plants over here. I have ficus, peperomia, and some Hoyas. There's a very nice light in the evening over here. So there's the masterpiece. A lot of my collection is here. It's my living room. This is the place in my house that I have a lot of sunlight during the day. South window, west window. I really like this place. This is the place that I spend the most of my time in here. I have a lot of alocasias in here. Some of them, I grew them myself. I also have my I also have my most expensive plants in it. So like my Syngonium albo and of course, my favorite plants, Monstera albo over here that I really like a lot, and I have a new leaf coming on along the way. Because she has a lot of white on the leaves that don't do photosynthesis, we have to put her under grow lights. It's very easy to care for. It's like my regular Monstera. We have to water it when the soil is very dry. That's it. All the collectioner wants to have this one because it's very pretty and very, very rare. First got into houseplants. It was on the first run of my boyfriend at his new work that he had to travel for work. So I was feeling a little bit alone. So I went to grocery shopping, got one, it's going well. So you want to have another one because you succeed with the first one. So you want to have more. I started to like them and learn about them, want to know about my plants, which first I didn't really want to know. I just wanted to put it there and be like, you're pretty, it's perfect. That's it, but it's not like that. You wanna know how to care for your plants. So I have a lot of dead friends, dead green girls, like I wanna call them.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Calling all entrepreneurs, Dragon's Den auditions are back. On March 6th, attend a special entrepreneurial workshop at the Okanagan Regional Library, Kelowna branch. The open auditions are on March 7th at the Kelowna Innovation Centre, and Vancouver auditions are on March 9th and 10th at the CBC Broadcast Centre. For more information and to register, visit cbc.ca/dragonsden.
Rogers Arena is up for the next stage of its facelift, one you can enjoy.
The arena will replace all of its lower and upper bowl seating with new black seating that includes, wait for it, cup holders. The latest phase of the $150 million revitalization that's planned for the next 2 summers.
This weekend, the people of Revelstoke revived their winter carnival just in time to celebrate the town's 125th anniversary.
The event has been on a hiatus for some 2 decades. We stopped by to check out the comeback.
This is not a turd of a carnival.
Not at all.
Super fun. I mean, look at how many community members are out here. Likely be a pusher or a puller. I'm definitely not sitting in it.
Anything that brings that amount of fun and community spirit, especially between like businesses, and it's a kind of a small knit business community. A lot of rivalry and fun, you know? Poke each other a little.
Celebrating the outdoor spirit of Revelstoke that is obviously so clearly alive here.
I think the turnout is great. It's so nice to see the community together, young and old, and we're about to start another race. Yay!
Outhouse racing. Who knew? Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC.
And we will have your next local news at 11 o'clock right here after the National. We'll see you then.